I'm Geki. Welcome to my review of Endless Winter, a game by Stan Kordonski, art by D'Amico for Fantasia Game. So, as a very small YouTube channel, I usually stay away from big, lavish, and popular productions like Endless Winter for two reasons. First, I don't have the equipment or the capabilities to do justice to the visual of all of this. And second, given the popularity and the hype surrounding it, during the Kickstarter and afterwards, there are already a lot of big channels that have covered this in depth, so the temptation was to just skip it. However, it was a game that was interesting enough to me to back it, something that I don't do often, that merges Europlay with a very nice production, something that I am sensible to, and that has a few things that I think are worth discussing. Mostly positive, spoiler alert, but not all of them. So why don't I give you a very quick idea of what, in my perspective, the game is about, and then I'll tell you what I feel and how these can be constructed in a critique. So first of all, Endless Winter plays over 4 rounds, nothing new there. And in each round you take different actions. It's a worker placement, but not strictly speaking, because you don't eliminate the spot for players who come after you. Simply you have the bonus if you are the first person to take a specific action during a round. You have 4 actions in the main game. There is one additional one in one of the expansions. They are here on this board. So you send your worker to one of these 4 areas. You get a little bonus if you're first. You play cards that give you labor, and the cards look like this, something like this. They give you labor, this blue symbol. You have some basic cards, and then with one action you can acquire new cards that are more specialized than the one you start with. So there are hunters who are good at hunting and craftsmen that are good at crafting, and you get the gist of it. There are 4 decks. Each are worth some points at the end of the game, 1 point per card. So doing it gives you a little bit of cards, a little bit of points, but mostly do it to become able to do more things. Interestingly enough, in this game, when you acquire new cards, they don't go in your discard pile, they go in your hand, so you can immediately use them. The second action is crafting. You get a different kind of cards. Instead of using them for action, use them for immediate bonuses every time they come back into your hand. They usually don't have any cost. You only have a cost if you want to play more than 1 per turn. The third action is traveling. There will be a map built with these hexagon tiles. They're very neat. You move little tents around, and then you can build villages. That gives you area majority bonus at the end of each round. And the fourth action you can do is hunting. You hunt for these animals. They each have set collections going at the end of the game, plus they can be slaughtered for food and resources during the game. You track all of this that you're doing on this beautiful board. At the beginning of the game, all of these spaces will be covered by things that you can put out on other boards, and here you track your food and axes. So some of this is very familiar. Take actions, take alternate turns taking action, take 3 actions every round, so you have 3 turns every round with some immediate bonus cards and some cards that make other actions better. There are no tactiles or anything like that. What you do is relatively simple: an area majority here, a set collection there, another presence but not really area majority down there. The more you do, the more your board becomes a source of income. You can max your resources. There are different ways to get resources, a little bit every turn, and then you can kill the animals. So all of this is not particularly new. Also, those who compare this to, say, Lost Ruins of Arnak or Dune Imperium, because it has worker placement and deck building, are, in my opinion, overstating both of those elements. because the deck building is not particularly intriguing. Most of the cards you build into your deck, everyone will be building them anyhow, and it's also not really a deck building in the sense that you get the cards in your hand and use them immediately. Given that there are only 4 rounds, you will not go through the deck that often. And even the worker placement, as I said, there is a little bonus, but it's little compared to the action. So you care about it, but it's not a main. That tightness of worker placement is not there. However, there are a couple of things that are very new. First, if you cannot do anything satisfying, the rest action that lets you draw a card and do a couple of other things is more meaningful than in other games, especially if you use one of the 2 basic modules, which you can throw in directly when you play. It connects to fighting for being first in turn order, although it's not as straightforward as the first person to rest gets the first player marker. And they made the refresh at the end of each round, so when everyone has taken their 3 turns, very interesting. Normally this kind of games is everyone gets back their workers, produce a couple of income, slide a few cards, refresh another couple of cards, get into the next round. This instead gives you another moment of confrontation with the other players. You reveal some of the cards that you set aside during the turn, during the round, and that determines, as I said, player order, but also player order comes with the sending bonuses. And also this connects to the other, I think, very interesting element of this game, which is the flexibility. Instead of having a lot of markets and you can trade this for this other, they came up with a very neat, some would say too generous solution, which is every time you get one of these benefits, you can get a lower benefit. And so you have different ways to get what you need to take action, which makes this quite involved and somewhat complex Euro feel very liberating. You can do a lot with what you're given. Which I think is the reason I didn't dislike this, despite its, I think, undeniably overwrought system of interconnecting mechanisms. Normally, I am not a fan of those. I like my Euros in the early Feld or in the Tascini, Luciani, Gigli kind of collective work, where simple mechanisms repeated over a reasonable amount of turns give rise to a complexity. Here, not so much. There are a lot of mechanisms, each with their own submenu of things, and each with a lot of little rules to keep track of. Not to a certain extent, and to give you a frame of reference, I tend not to like those very long iterative games where the arc stretches a little bit too much for me. But this somehow captures that snappy feeling of each turn, even if the turn is not particularly quick in clock time. But in terms of what you're doing, there are a few choices that you do every time you go to an action, and you take 12 actions during the game. As you imagine, there is one of those where there are a lot of little things that happen, but you do take 12 actions. And so that clean machine propelling resolves the risk that big long Euros and Euros with all of these over interlocking mechanism tend to have for me, which is the feeling of, oh, now I have to do that again and again to maximize my score, but without soul. The game is certainly beautiful. It is one of the most stunning Euros I have seen, from the little washed miniatures that are completely superfluous. This is one of your workers, your leader. It has comes with a little ability, completely superfluous but neat. The art of the Miko, I think, is fantastic. I like the Miko in the Valeria series, and particularly in the Garfield games, West Kingdom and North Sea, etc. series. But here he's liberated from that painting a person kind of thing, which gives him that cartoonish effect. I really like him, but sometimes they can get a little samey and a little cartoonish. Here, between the animals and the landing tile, the land tiles and all of that, the beauty of it shines through. The components are stellar, from the wood to the plastic resins and things like that. As I said, there are only a few miniatures, which is good. We don't need miniatures in all games, but the resin that they use is very neat. The cardboard is thick. The art on the cards is functional. The variety of things, even in the basic game, is surprising. You can do a lot of different things. The animals, they are all set collection, but what you can do if you kill them feels different, and often the choice between one and the other is significant. The cards, I was a little surprised that they don't do anything particularly special, and each deck is the same, so you have 4 or 5 choices of cards to buy, not many more. The action cards, but they do feel interesting in, am I going to use them for their intended action? Am I going to use them to support a different action even if they might be less efficient? Or am I keeping them so that they will give me something during the eclipse phase, that refresh phase that I was mentioning before? So what this gave me was an experience that I wasn't expecting. I was worried this would either prove to be a very light Euro with too much production, or vice versa, something that would keep going for 3 hours with all of these things making it impossible to explain and all of that. It didn't. It felt right into the middle. I must say I really like it. I don't love it as much as the community in general seems to do. This will stay in my collection, no doubt, and I will play it when people want to play it, but it won't become a mainstay of my game night or anything like that. However, I think it's surprisingly easy to teach for what it is. Very beautiful. It has different strategies that can work, especially once you throw in some of the modules and of the expansions. There was in particular an expansion that allows you to swap those decks and the animal decks with something that does something a little different, and I think that's very interesting. There are also 2 expansions that instead expand the scope. The map becomes more complicated with the river, or you can have a 5th action. I haven't tried those yet, but the ones that add variety is not the variety of just shuffling more cards, is choose to play with a little more constrictive option to make the game a little tighter, and I really like that. And I think this shows that you can have very well thought production that marries with very solid mechanism. The pace is very good. The arc makes sense. There are a few things that change mid-game so that you don't feel that the second half is exactly a mirror replica of the first. I'm looking forward to their next game, although the theme captures me less. Oh, one thing about the theme. It's called Endless Winter Paleo-Americans. I don't know enough about prehistoric Ice Age to judge whether that's appropriate or not. To me, it felt very generically Ice Agey. I don't know what Paleo-Americans during Ice Age were doing different than Paleo-Europeans or Paleo-Indian subcontinent people. Maybe the animals were different, I don't know. The game is helped by the theme, but definitely not supported by it. The reason the game will make it or break it for you is not going to be the theme. But it is pleasant, it's different, it looks different, the theme is original. I think if you are interested in what Endless Winter seems to be, you will like Endless Winter. It's not a game for everyone, it's not the deepest of Euros, it's certainly not an economic game, and vice versa, it's not a game that you can bring out with your family doesn't play games. But once you know what it is and you are curious whether it's gonna be fun for you or not, I think you won't go wrong with it. As usual, we have talked more about this and with two people, and so a little bit more of back and forth with Nathan on our podcast, Boardgamegeek. So check that out if you want to hear more about it. And until next time, I'm Geki. Thank you for watching. Consider subscribing and all of that stuff. Have a good day.